is in session. This is the Draft Seminar Rookie Profile Series hosted by me, Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, joined as always by my co-host, John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar. And on today's episode, we are previewing the wide receivers that will be at the 2022 Senior Bowl. The entire Rookie Profile Series will be simulcast on the Rookie Big Board and NFL Draft Bible Podcast Network podcast channels, and of course on the Rookie Big Board YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd love to hear from you. Leave us a comment, anything about the show. Let us know which wide receivers are your favorite, who you're excited to see at the Senior Bowl. If you agree with us, disagree with us, we love the Discord back and forth. Before we jump into our first wide receiver, who is one of my favorites right off the bat, I do want to make sure you know that you can check out all of John's work at footballdiehards.com, in addition, of course, to si.com/NFL/draft. And you can check out all of my work at patreon.com/the FF Educator, which does include my rookie Devy Dynasty rankings. John, are you fired up to talk about this deep wide receiver group?
My friend, absolutely. And wide receivers can really change their draft value, I believe, more than any other skill position player. Right now, we have been watching the San Francisco 49ers all late in the season and today against the Cowboys. Matt, both Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, they both became much more interesting after watching what they did at the Senior Bowl. And those are just two. Whenever we see wide receivers, they can really help their draft stock at the Senior Bowl because in one-on-one drills, Matt, they're competing with the best senior defensive backs in the league, and that matters.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead, John, and jump right into one of my favorite guys off the bat here. If you're playing Devy and you've been listening to me, you probably have him stashed on your roster too, because I have him everywhere. And that is Khalil Shakir, the wide receiver out of Boise State. Very fluid athlete. He combines that athleticism with good size at a position that demands they both be present. Shakir can play along the outside. I think he might be somebody who can better dominate split in or in that slot position in the NFL. He displays great short area quickness, lateral agility, a very elusive player in space. He certainly has that coveted yards after catch potential. I'm very excited about Khalil Shakir, John. How are you into this Boise State wide receiver?
He's in my top 12 prospects in this class. And Matt, when you go to the NFL as a wide receiver, this isn't the 1970s and 80s where you had to beat your cornerback one-on-one matchup. In today's NFL, with complex routes, with having to read the defense, zone man coverage, 2 high safeties, 3 high safeties, you have sometimes, what's the word that I'm looking about? Routes in which you have to make a decision. What do they call those? Why am I all of a sudden blank?
Option routes?
Option routes. That's why Khalil Shakir, he was a 3-time Mountain West academic team. What does that tell me? He should be able to step into an NFL team. He should be able to comprehend the playbook. And he can play slot and Z, I believe, sooner rather than later at the NFL level. When you have a young man who's in football intelligence combined with off-the-field intelligence so he can grab the playbook and he has multi-dimensional capabilities, I like him a ton. Look at that, 6 feet, long arms, lengthy. He looks very fast. We're going to wait to see his pro day / combine. A little thin at 190, but that's absolutely fine. Look at that, 208 career receptions, Matt. 13.8 yards per reception. And this year, everyone tried to stop him. 36% team aerial dominator. Shakir is a sneaky second-round draft pick if he continues to rise in the draft process. I have him in top 12. I like him a lot.
John, people always ask me for sleepers. Who's your sleeper candidate? Who's somebody that's going to surprise us? Who is a good third, fourth round value rookie pick. And at this point in time, I've been giving people Alec Pierce's name. He's a big-bodied wideout coming out of Cincinnati, and I think he has the potential to dominate along the boundary for an NFL team. He displays the ability to consistently win contested catch balls with good vertical ability, sticky hands, and excellent concentration through traffic. He runs a solid route tree, not asked to do a ton, but he's effective at what he is asked to do, not fazed by contact when going up to catch the ball. I think Pierce is a sneaky future red zone monster here, and he's somebody who I think might gain a lot of attention down in Mobile.
Matt, this Bearcat offense was loaded. We talked about Desmond Ridder. We've talked about Jerome Ford. And whenever I've been scouting Cincinnati over the last year, Alec Pierce kept popping up on the screen. He was clearly Desmond Ridder's number one guy. You know, it reminds me a little bit of the old Dwight Clark with the 49ers. Maybe I'm reflecting so much recently because this 49er-Cowboy rivalry. But Alec Pierce is a boundary big receiver. Now, he actually looks 6'3" and 213. He is a physical wide receiver. If you know, he looks like someone who could help Andy Reid in Kansas City. Also, I feel like it's a team Pittsburgh or a player Pittsburgh would like. Like he's Chase Claypool light. You know, he's probably not as good of a receiver, but he is a freak, according to Bruce Feldman of The Athletic. So I'm very interested to see what his athletic abilities are at the combine. Can't wait to see him compete one-on-one. Now, if you're looking for separation, you're not going to get a lot with Alec Pierce. But he can play, and he has good hands.
All right. We're taking you on a roller coaster with this lineup here because we're going from a big-bodied boundary guy to Calvin Austin III. Now, Calvin Austin, on a good day, soaking wet, comes in at 5'9", 162. So he is certainly a small-framed wide receiver. However, John, we're coming off of a year where Tutu Atwell was a second-round pick. So this limited frame, smaller frame, is no longer a limitation for NFL draft capital. I do have Calvin Austin projected as a late day 2 NFL draft selection. He possesses a tremendous amount of quickness. He speeds up very well off the line of scrimmage. Now, he does have a limited catch radius naturally by his size, but his ability to catch off-target passes is very strong. He reacts well to them. He understands how to anticipate where the ball is going to be. And I got to tell you, catching balls in that Memphis offense requires a lot of concentration for off-target passes, right? Here's the thing about Calvin Austin. He is going to be starting on special teams immediately for an NFL team. And that's one of the things we always say. If you're taking a shot on a guy later in your rookie drafts, if he is a special teams contributor quickly, it means he's going to hang around on the roster. When a wide receiver goes down, he can step in. He can show that team that he deserves to be in the wide receiver position as well. So there's a lot to like about Calvin Austin. Don't let his size deter you. And certainly somebody who I think in one-on-one situations at the Senior Bowl is going to shine.
2 words, blazing speed. When you watch the film of this young man, you can't but be wowed by that speed. I believe you mentioned Tutu Atwell. Very similar. And we saw him. Didn't the Rams take him in the second round?
Second round selection.
Year? Yes. Now, he didn't get on the field. Similar player. Very much more than people think, in my opinion. Interesting. You know, he didn't get a football scholarship, Matt. He went to Memphis on a track and field scholarship, but he wanted to play football. That was his dream. So he just kept on working. And last year, remember, in the COVID 2020, players left. They had an opportunity to put him on the field. Calvin Austin ran with it literally. All those 156 catches, Matt, were basically in the past 2 seasons. 16.3 yards a catch. Look at that. 25 touchdowns. basically 1 out of 6 receptions, he's reaching the end zone. He also had some rushing touch, but very, very productive. And look at that, despite his size, he had a 32% dominator rating. If he gets into the 3rd round, very interesting fantasy player. I do believe he has a role day one on special teams. Kick and punt returning with that kind of speed, a team will take that, especially a team that needs a returner. Hey, he was first team all AAC the past 2 years. I like him, Matt.
Back to the boundary we go, John, with Romeo Doubs out of Nevada. Now, if you're familiar with Carson Strong, who we talked about in the QB preview episode, he tossed a lot of deep balls, right? We got to see Carson Strong's arm. And who was catching most of those deep balls? That was Romeo Doubs. He profiles to me best as a boundary threat at the next level, accelerates really well in a straight line, displays the ability to consistently win in the deep third of the field. It's not something that folks always look for, John. The ability to win at the top, the deep third of the field, what I would call, past 30 or 40 yards downfield. It's not something that folks always look for fantasy football purposes, but that is your home run ability when you're a wide receiver, right? That's touchdown ability. That's how you get 40 or 50-yard plays and become a really enticing fantasy football player. And Romeo Doubs does that. He has great hands. He reacts to the ball well in midair, and he's not phased catching the ball through traffic. Now, he's not a perfect prospect. I think he has a little bit too simple of a route tree. He lacks technical refinement. He's a bit rigid of an athlete. But if he is placed in the right role in an NFL offense, especially if he is on an offense that likes to go vertical, likes to push that ball consistently into the deep third of the field, he's somebody who is absolutely going to be on my radar.
Oh, Matt, he has a role in the NFL. I think he can play Z immediately with the opportunity to move to an X. I do agree with you. He's a boundary receiver, 6'2", 200. He has NFL size. So there are going to be teams that look at 6'2", 200, and they're going to covet that at the X position. Now, I agree with you. He doesn't seem to be the smoothest athlete, right? Like sometimes you watch receivers and you're just like, whoa, what an athlete. I don't feel that way. Now, obviously, he's very good, but he's not that, blow me away when I'm watching him. He also 14.8 yards per reception. Like you said, they threw to him deep. Look at that 71% catch rate on a team loaded. Remember, we talked about Cole Turner. They also had Elijah Cooks. He had a 35% dominator rating in 2020. He had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. I think he needs a little coaching up. I do think there's room for improvement. Can't wait to see his athletic ability at some of those drills. I think he can move up a ton. I like him. And one thing that I will say, Michael Gallup, one of the things he does well is he wins in the top third of the field. I think Romeo Doubs does the same thing. If you're looking for an X receiver one-on-one who can win deep, Romeo Doubs can do that for you.
All right, John. Jahan Dotson. We buried the lead a little bit here. But for me, Jahan Dotson is the best of the rest. He doesn't fall into my top tier of wide receivers in this year's class, and I think that's pretty standard across the board here. But he is such a good wide receiver. He's an exciting prospect. He has game-breaking potential. Fluid athlete, displays excellent quickness at all 3 levels of the field. And not every prospect you can say that they find a way to win in the first level of the field, the first 10 yards, that middle level, and then the deep field as well. But Dotson can do it all. He really can. His game is highlighted by very consistent hands, a larger than expected catch radius for his frame. He's 5'11", 184, but sometimes when you're watching his tape, you'd think he was 6'2", 200 with the way that he has the ability to pull in those off-target catches. And John, I love his route running. A very effective post route, a good slant route. You know how I love when my wide receivers have a good slant route and a really consistent comeback route. And I got to tell you, John, I saw firsthand I was at the Maryland game this year. I saw firsthand how Jahan Dotson can beat you on the seam. All right, 3 deep touchdowns for Jahan Dotson in that game. And when I say game-breaking potential, I mean it. The key for Dotson, where does he fit in an NFL offense? Can I project serious volume to him? If I can project targets for Jahan Dotson, then he has the ability to be a top 4 or 5 wide receiver from this class.
Oh, he definitely does. Now, he might also be that wide receiver, Matt, who's uber efficient. He might be the type of receiver on 6 targets, 4 receptions, 90 yards, and a touchdown. He might be that type of player. He's better than KJ Hamler. And everyone, the Broncos took KJ Hamler in the 2nd round. I just looked it up. He was the 46th pick in that draft. Jahan Dotson is much better. The first thing I think of is slippery speed. Matt, he just breaks ankles in the intermediate routes. He's not running just short, simple routes. Dotson runs it looks like the full route tree. He's attacking defenses deep with his speed. He is great on those deep crossing patterns, similar to DJ Moore, but different. And he shakes opposing defensive backs. There's sometimes he's just wide open, Matt. You're like, where did the defensive back go? 15.1 yards per reception. And I think if you love college football and you love scouting, you said you had that aha moment when you saw him live against Maryland. My aha moment was against Ohio State 2 years ago. 144 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns against the Buckeyes. He made some catches against NFL defensive backs that no one should have made. He is amazing. 5'11", 184. Man, if he was like 195 with a little power, because he's not a physical wide receiver. But Matt, he might be as good as DJ Moore running routes. He's awesome. I think he's a 2nd-round pick. He might slip into the 1st round. Yes, he's the star of the Senior Bowl crop.
All right, John, coming up next is Danny Gray out of SMU. I got to tell you, John, I ended up watching a lot of SMU tape between watching Gray and his teammate Roberson, who we will talk about. We talked about Grant Calcaterra last week. And, of course, I watched a lot of SMU live. I love watching that Ponies offense. But I got to tell you, I'm trying to watch the Roberson tape. My eye catches Danny Gray. I'm trying to watch the Calcaterra tape. My eye catches Danny Gray. He has an excitement to his profile here. He has good downfield acceleration, works well along the outside. He speeds up quickly. He releases well off the line of scrimmage, has the ability to dominate in contested catch situation. I like his hips, John. They're fluid. It allows him to get through his routes in a really seamless manner. Now, he's going to do the majority of his damage before the catch. He's got a little bit of shake to his game when he has the ball in his hands. But it's like, you're caught in this gray area, I guess, pun intended, not exactly on purpose there. But he's good. He's not at that elite level, but he's a solid player, and we need to be paying attention to where he lands in the NFL.
I want to like Danny Gray. I really want to give him a 3rd-round grade. But, Matt, I just can't. He's just not that level. Now, he can still grow, 6'2", 199. So he has the NFL size. I think he's a Z receiver. I don't think he's a complete X. He's not that alpha male type of X boundary receiver. He's very good with the ball in his hands, gains a lot of yards. I think he's an ideal 3rd receiver. We've been watching what Cedric Wilson has been doing with the Cowboys and what Michael Gallup has done. As a 3rd receiver, where Danny Gray doesn't have to be the guy, where you can scheme some touches, put him in better matchups, I think Danny Gray could be a productive NFL receiver with like 700 yards a year upside. I like him. Let's see what the NFL thinks of him. Draft capital is going to mean a lot.
Coming out of South Alabama, John, we have Jalen Tolbert. He is a fast wideout that can burn in a straight line. He closes speed quickly at any level of the field. He can work the underneath of the field well. He runs a nice drag route, a really good out route as well. Oftentimes the DBs, John, that he's playing against there at South Alabama, they just don't have the ability to play man on him. They are like 8-10 yards off the line of scrimmage. They have no interest in trying to press Jalen Tolbert. So he just absolutely chews him up underneath. He wins at the catch point. He's got good body positioning. I think he's somebody who's going to go to the combine, John. You're going to see his height, 6'3". You're going to see his 40 time, and you're going to get really excited. I think, though, and I'm predicting this here because I've seen ADP trends over the last couple of years, when the fantasy football community sees 6'3" guy, they see the 40 time he's going to put up, they're going to push his ADP too high. And I say that because his hands worry me, John. A lot of drops on tape. And fantasy football players love to tell me that hands don't matter, that ignore the drops. It's not a sticky stat. Tell me whatever you want, but I didn't draft Jalen Reagor for a reason, and I'm not sorry about it, right? So, and I'm not comparing Tolbert to Reagor, but when you have a bad hand score from me, you're probably not going to get drafted, but still a ton of allure here. He's somebody who a lot of folks are going to get excited about.
There's a lot of buzz around Jalen Tolbert. I do like him, Matt. The first number in my model that jumps off is a 48% team aerial dominator. But you do have to put it in context. He's playing in the Sun Belt. He obviously was just so much better than every defensive back that he came across. And you're right. Defensive backs this year looked like they were afraid to press him at all. Like literally the coaching staff in the film room said, you don't go within 5 yards of Jalen Tolbert, and we prefer that you give him a 12-yard cushion. I mean, it was silly at times, but I'll give the man credit. He still performed. I agree with you, not the best hands, but he was the Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year. To me, how is he going to do against SEC level defensive backs on press coverage at drills? I mean, to me, that's basically going to tell us his value, because the first thing I'm doing as a defensive coach, I'm going to press the young man. I mean, especially a young man where he did not have it at South Alabama. So I can't wait to see him in these drills. He could be an early third-round pick if he goes and hits a home run. There's a lot of things to like about Jalen Tolbert. Let's see what the NFL thinks, but I can't wait to see him.
John, Velus Jones Jr. out of the University of Tennessee. To call him experienced might be an understatement. 6 seasons in college, gets his full undergrad degree at USC, spends 4 years there as a graduate transfer to Tennessee during the COVID year, so takes advantage of that second year, and it was perfect timing for Velus Jones because he ends up in Josh Heupel's high-octane offense, and that is really what has springboarded him into being a legitimate NFL draft prospect here. He has really sticky hands, and he is going to dominate the underneath of the field. Effective drags, good comeback routes, nice out route. He's a fluid athlete for his size, 6'0", 200, and he really has the ability to play in a little bit of that, little bit more, I don't want to call it a big slot role because he's not, 6'0" is still just 6'0", but I think he can be that stronger presence in the slot, maybe bully those nickel DBs if they try to put him on him. I don't know if he's going to be somebody who is going to rack up the yards for fantasy football purposes, but I can tell you this. I expect him to stick on an NFL roster. I expect him to chew up the underneath of the field, and I think he's somebody you're going to want on your bench for when those bye weeks kick in, when those injuries kick in. He's going to be a consistent week in and week out guy, maybe with a lower ceiling, but I think a good floor here with Velus Jones Jr.
Matt, I thought a lot about Velus Jones and watched a lot more tape than one would think. Here's why. The USC is interested now. Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Drake London were all in that locker room. So maybe there's a reason Velus Jones didn't get on the field. Second, when you think about Josh Palmer and how Jawan Jennings is now playing kind of nice, for San Francisco, Tennessee is still an SEC school. They're going to look at Velus Jones, and the NFL is going to like him more than the Twitterverse. Now, one thing jumps out in my model. He has the highest catch rate of any receiver in this class at 78%. That's fascinating. Also, we know the NFL are copycats. Velus Jones has a little bit of Deebo Samuel in him. I'm telling you right now, teams are going to think about finding a receiver they can line up in the backfield. Velus Jones, with his special teams ability and his running ability, they're going to like him a lot more than your model indicates. And if you like early breakout age, no one who likes that is going to look at a 6-year receiver. But Velus Jones is going to have a role in the NFL, folks. He's an interesting under-the-radar prospect.
Christian Watson out of North Dakota State University, our national champion Bison. I gotta be honest. I was sharing with John before we clicked record here. I watched the Christian Watson tape, and I'm seeing this guy who works around the field. He's a speedy guy moving around the field. He accelerates well downfield. He has great quickness, right? Consistent hands. So I liked him a lot. He's comfortable working with the ball in his hands after the catch. They gave him targets at the line of scrimmage, a lot of manufactured production. They gave him handoffs. They gave him end arounds. I was like, this guy is fantastic. And I'm watching his tape, and I say to myself, well, I didn't look up his measurables. I'm expecting this guy to come in at like 5'10", 5'11". He comes in at 6'5", 208. So I'm like, so this guy, he's quick, he's speedy, and he's got the size. You know, there's always going to be questions about players coming out of the FCS level, but that's why he's at the Senior Bowl. If he goes to the Senior Bowl and is able to win in those one-on-one situations with that size and that athletic testing that I expect him to put up at the Combine, we're looking at a legitimate NFL impact player here with Christian Watson.
There's no question. And Matt, we just mentioned Velus Jones reminds me a little bit of Deebo Samuel. But look at what Christian Watson did. 49 carries for 392 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 27 kick returns for 686 yards and 2 touchdowns. There's your versatility. So he has size and versatility on the resume. Obviously, he looks very fast against FCS level defensive backs. We need to see him in those drills. But, Matt, he's a fascinating wide receiver. He could climb up draft boards and be a 5th or 4th round pick. I can't wait to see him.
John, another really sneaky player for me is Bo Melton out of Rutgers. He has a multifaceted skill set, a quick athlete. They used him with handoffs, manufactured targets at or near the line of scrimmage, reverses, but they also work the ball downfield. He has great reaction to underthrown and off-target passes, great vertical ability. I think he's somebody who's going to go to the Combine and test well, great body control, smooth elusiveness. Think he was hidden there in New Brunswick up there playing for Rutgers. But this is somebody, again, I gave you one sleeper with Alec Pierce. My second sleeper at the wide receiver position is Bo Melton.
I had so many Bo Melton on so many CFF rosters. I really expected a leap. He came back. He could have gone into last year's draft class, but he took advantage of the COVID season and came back. Unfortunately, Rutgers had a lot of problems at the quarterback position. They weren't exactly throwing the ball. So Bo Melton's numbers aren't there, my friends, but he is an interesting prospect. I do like him with the size, 6'1", 190, or I'm sorry, 5'11", 195. Bo Melton is a good player. He could make a difference here, but let's see. Draft capital is going to be everything with Bo Melton.
John, Reggie Roberson, the other wide receiver at SMU that I alluded to earlier, he's somebody I've been waiting for a little while. He first caught my eye back in 2019 tape, and I remember this. I was watching Oh my gosh. It was Baltimore wide receiver. Who is the he ended up going to Baltimore, the SMU receiver.
James Prochet.
Yes, James Prochet. I kept thinking Duvernay, but I'm like, no, Duvernay's out of Texas. James Prochet. Yeah. I'm watching the Prochet tape, and Reggie Roberson. I'm like, forget James Prochet. Let me watch some Reggie Roberson. Serious flashes of dangerous ability along the sideline. Moves very quickly in a straight line. Great vertical ability. He's very comfortable working the boundary. He's got a good feel for where to be, where to put his body in positions to win. He's elusive in space. And so there's a lot to like about Reggie Roberson. The challenge is his injuries. A non-contact knee injury that cut his 2020 season short. And so he ended up missing time. He didn't enter in originally to the 2021 class, which I thought he might. So he ended up being there a little bit longer. Other wide receivers emerged there and kind of stole his thunder a little bit. So certainly still a really interesting prospect. I don't have a great feel on how the NFL views him yet, but somebody that I'm absolutely tracking.
You know, SMU had a lot of good wide receivers. Next year, we might be talking about Rashid Rice. We just mentioned that Danny Gray. Grant Calcaterra, we looked at him on our tight end video. So Reggie Roberson did not get the lion's share of targets like he did 2 years ago. I think it's going to come down to medicals. He does track the deep ball very well. Let's see what the medicals say, and let's see what the draft capital is on Reggie Roberson.
All right, John, we have two more players left here in our preview series. And let's start with Tre Turner out of Virginia Tech. Turner is a versatile wide out. He can be an effective weapon if intentionally schemed in a creative NFL offense. He's a quick athlete, good body control, good field vision when working with the ball in his hands. He's quick enough to beat linebackers to the edge. At times, Virginia Tech did use him as a quasi-running back there. Great vertical ability, can win contested catch situations. So Tre Turner is somebody who, again, I don't think he was really in the offense that was best set to highlight his skill set, but somebody who could be sneaky good at the next level.
You know what's fascinating about that? Part of it is Justin Fuentes. I expected him to throw the ball more effectively when he took over the job for the Hokies. He just never got the quarterback. He did have Hendon Hooker, but he didn't use him correctly. So Tre Turner, I drafted him for a couple of years in college fantasy football. Never became the stud that I had hoped. But look at that, Matt. 17.1 yards per catch, 6'2", 190. He is the type of player who could go to Mobile, Alabama, and if he has a great week, he could get on the radar and might get into that third day, draft pick. Interesting player.
All right, John, and finishing up this episode with another player that I'm fired up about is going to be on my sleeper radar, and that is Dontario Drummond out of Mississippi. He is a great combination of athleticism along with size. He's dangerous before the catch. He displays sticky hands and the ability to react well to any pass. He's an effective runner with the ball in his hands, displays good field vision, good contact balance, and some elusiveness even in tight space. Fluid athlete, John. He runs a sharp slant route, which I love, an effective post route, and he looks comfortable working along the boundary or over the middle of the field. I think folks might be surprised with how high Dontario Drummond goes in the NFL draft. I think he's somebody who is going to be right in that fourth round range, potentially going even earlier.
Matt, I think he might go in day 3. SEC West, 6'1", 220. This year he had 76 receptions for 1,028 yards, averaged 13.5 yards per catch. In 3 seasons, he's averaged 14.3. But I've become biased towards the SEC West. You look at Elijah Moore, you look at DK Metcalf, you look at A.J. Brown coming out of Mississippi. There are skills here. He has good hands. He gains chunk yardage. 220, Matt. There's a role for a 6'1", 220 wide receiver who played in a Lane Kiffin offense. I think he's going to surprise people at the Senior Bowl. He might go day 2. Definitely will be drafted by the 4th round. I know the NFL will like him. I like him also.
There you have it. That is our wide receiver Senior Bowl preview episode. Up next, John, is the Rookie Profile Series, the best time of the year. You're going to want to make sure you're subscribed, whether you're listening or viewing. You're going to want to make sure you're checking out all of John's work at footballdiehards.com and following him on Twitter at gridironschol91. I am on Twitter at the FF_educator, and this is the time of the year, folks. Check out the Rookie Big Board at patreon.com/theFFeducator to get access to my rookie rankings, Dynasty Devy rankings, and get in on the Rookie Big Board Discord channel. As always,